Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Hello. Welcome to another recommendations video. As I said, my name is Jen. We're going to be diving into some bad boy romances and a bad girl or two to share as well. So I'm combining a few different micro tropes into one with this one. You know, I think I'm going to title the video like bad boys or like felons or something like that. I don't know which I'll name it, but this video for my Rex is going to be a mix of I have a couple prison romances. I have a couple escaped prisoner romances. I have a couple of ex-felon romances, and then yeah, I think those are the three categories. There's previously was in prison, currently is in prison trying to escape, or yeah, I think that's it. Has been released from prison or is escaping prison or was in prison for a time. I don't know. Those things, they're all the same thing. You get what I mean. But I have some recs for this that I'm very excited for because I have had ask for both prison romances and felon romances, and I just didn't quite have enough of each. So we're gonna do this, and hopefully you like some of these bad boys and girls. So I'm actually gonna start the video with a female prisoner who, in the beginning of her story, she is getting let out of prison, brought out of prison in chains. She technically is still a prisoner, but the prince and the captain of the guard are sent to retrieve her because they're going to put her into a competition for the next assassin for the king. And if you haven't guessed yet by what it is, some of you are probably already yelling what it is. I'm recommending actually Throne of Glass and Selena Sardathian, because I was putting this together and I was like, you know what? She starts off in a prison at the beginning of this, in the salt mines, basically slavery, is supposed to be doing work for the country. And our Prince Dorian and Kael, the captain of the guard, are sent, Dorian sends himself there basically. He's putting forth his own candidate to compete in this assassins competition that his father's putting together, and he chooses one of the most tricky little thieves and rapscallions that's known in the land, Selena Sardathian. She's been in the salt mines. It's a very dangerous place to be, and she gets this opportunity to compete in this, and if she wins, and only if she wins, you know, she'll then be the king's assassin, but she won't have to go back to the salt mines. And there's a lot of secrets that Selena is keeping, and this opportunity, though she thinks the prince is kind of cocky and the captain of the guard has a stick up his ass, this is her best chance. She was never going to get out on her own. So yeah, this is me recommending Throne of Glass to you. I feel like I don't find ways to recommend these books in my rec videos, because they're usually just in a fantasy recommendation or something, but here we are. This one starts with a prisoner if you'd like to do that. Okay, now let's get into some that are maybe a little bit more of what you're looking for, okay? So the first one I want to recommend is the one I think a lot of you will have heard from me before, but it fits in this category like no one else. This is, of course, Hold by Claire Kent. This was the very first Claire Kent that I ever read, so it holds a very soft place in my heart. I ended up binging this whole series before I stumbled upon the Kindle series, which is what I talk about mostly from her now, because it's my favorite. It's amazing. But this one is about our heroine, which now I forgot what her name is because this is a first-person story, so I can't remember what her name is. Let me peek. I have my notes for this one because some of these I read quite a long time ago. Let me find her name. What is her name? What is her name? Rihanna? I think it's Rihanna. Okay, our heroine Rihanna, she gets herself in some trouble. She's convicted of a minor crime, but she has really offended some people really high up, and so she gets sent to a prison planet. It's called Genus 6, and the entire planet is covered by this poisonous ocean, and beneath that is the prison. So it's a very violent, scary place where anything goes. You're basically, when you're dropped off, like thrown into this pit. Like there's no doors, there's no way out except through them, like the, and so it's just so unfair that she's being sent there. And you know, she knows that she's going to be ripped apart. This is all men who are in this prison. The time when women are sent there, they are very quickly just fucked to death. They're raped to death. That's what happens. And so this woman is, you know, basically going to have a death sentence because she pissed off some intergalactic politicians, right? It's just so unfair. So while she is being brought down there, the prison guard has a moment, honestly, of like, compassion for her, and he says, find the toughest man there, offer yourself to him in exchange for protection. So, you know, it's like you're going to be raped either way. Maybe use your body to your advantage instead of letting someone take it from you. Make a deal. And so, you know, she of course isn't real excited to do this, but she knows that this guy's right. You know, what is my best chance of at least having a livable or survivable situation happening? And so she sees this guy named Kane. He appears to have his own room. He's able to lock himself in there, like he's in control of keeping himself safe, and he seems really tough. So when she lands there, she offers herself to Kane and is like, I want to be with you. And he's like, okay. So he takes her into his cell, locks the door, and immediately she pays him. And they have sex for the first time on his, you know, very narrow bed in there with people still being able to look in the window. Like, it's a very, like, you know, traumatic situation. But the way that Claire Kent writes these type of situations, because I'll tell you, this is something that I actually love about her stories as Claire Kent. There's a lot of sex being used as transaction, or like awkward situations, or falling in love with someone that you're with them only for survival. Like, that's a lot of what the Kindled series is. And this, the prison series, is really a lot of that as well. So yeah. And this one it's under 200 pages. It's a really quick story, but she has traded herself with him. And the more she gets to know Kane, it turns out that she really picked the right horse to back, because he might have a plan to get us off of this prison planet. So this is the first book in the series. The whole series is different, like, types of alien planets. I think they're each a prison planet, but I could be wrong. It's been a while since I've read all of them. I know at least one of the other ones is, but another one is the woman accidentally ends up in this planet. So there's a few different things with it. But I thought this was so fascinating, and it started my love of Claire Kent. So it gets an A+ from me for sure. All right, now the one I want to recommend that maybe you haven't heard of. I think I recommend, it's been quite a few years since I recommended this one, but at the time, after I read Hold, this book was then recommended to me as being like that. And this one is called Guardian, and it is the first in a Prison Planet series. So this one specifically, they're all prison planets. This is by Emmy Chandler, is the name. And this one is about, again, I have notes for this one because it has been 3 years since I've read this. So this one is about Audra Copeland, and she's among a dozens of newly convicted felons who's dropped off on a prison planet, Rodon. And this is where she discovers that the women of the zone have a long-standing arrangement with the men. If they hand over 6 of the new people, the men don't raid and rape the women that are there. So it's like there are no rules on this planet, but there's different zones to it. And the men and the women have kind of become these two different, like, factions there. And the women, to protect themselves, again, they've made this bargain. Now, in this case, it's the bargain being made kind of against the new women's choice. Like, they don't get to pick which of them, you know, this happens to or whatever. So what she can do is she can take her chances, or she can select a guardian. And the deal is simple. It's sex in exchange for food and safety from the other 200 men that are in the zone. So again, it's really like making your choices. So she sees Tyson on the edge of the crowd, and she they call him the savage, but he looks well fed and taken care of. And so she's like, that's the one that I'm going to offer herself to. So, yeah, the only thing with this, though, is that you're only supposed to get to have that guardian for 30 days at a time. So these 6 women who are given, they belong to someone for 30 days and they'll be like unmolested by anyone but that man, except at the end of the 30 days, then they go to another one. So yeah, again, another one that's having to do with deals. This one I remember feeling a lot darker. Now, I know the way I described Hold makes it sound like so dark and creepy, but when you read it, you'll find it isn't as scary as it sounds, because it's just hard to explain. But having read lots of Claire Kent's books, there's a lot of situations that seem scarier than they end up being for you. But this one definitely feels a lot darker, and it's very dystopian and very like uncomfortable type of situation. But there we go. That is that one. Next, for a felon, we have Hitched, which of course had to be brought up. And this one involves an escaped prisoner. This one is very intense. Now, I myself am not the hugest fan of this one, but a lot of my friends are. Jess from Honest Fiction, Cheyenne from That Tall Book Girl, they both really like this book. And many others did too. And I thought it was fascinating. My one gripe that I shared is I think this one actually would have been better as a novella than as a full-length book, because I think it starts to get really unbelievable pretty quickly. But if you want one of these really dark felon romances where it doesn't have to do with him being misunderstood or her being accidentally put in a place, like, no, he is as bad as what he's convicted for, and he should have stayed in prison for the rest of his life. But yo, he escaped. He escaped, okay? So his name is Lex, and there is a snowstorm happening, and there's Selena, who ends up stopping to, because he's a hitchhiker, so she stops to get him. Now, Selena herself is already in a very abusive relationship, and so that kind of puts her in a mindset of, like, she is a bit more, like, I don't want to say willing, but she's a bit more used to being controlled and abused. Like, there's not a nicer way to say that. It's just true. So she's kind of a prime target for someone like Lex. And so he decides that he wants to use her for more than just a ride. He's been in a prison a long time and he wants a woman. So he's going to take this woman who picked him up. But the more he like finds out about her, and again, I hate to make him sound like he's sweet or has a soft side, because he doesn't. But when he finds out that she's from this abusive marriage, he's like, well, how dare that motherfucker? I am the only one who gets to abuse this woman that I found. I know I'm making it sound so appealing, but a lot of people find this fascinating, right? It literally is a car crash you can't look away from. And if you like serial killer romances and you like that twisted, like, it's here for you, okay? That's why, even though this wasn't my favorite, I still put it in recommendation videos, because I acknowledge that there's things that you guys will like, right? And that's what I'm here for, is to pass those on without any judgment or without any, like, you know, don't read this. That's not what I'm here to do. And I will have links to all these books I'm talking about, by the way. They'll all be down below so you can get one for yourself. But yeah, they go on a crazy, crazy ride with this one. One of the things, like, from my note, I'll say this because it's funny, okay? I was funny in this review. I said, as a true crime junkie, these two are definitely dying or going back to prison within 10 years. So the HEA factor is a little bit tainted. And I say that because they make a lot of mistakes on their road trip, not because, you know, of any moral judgments. That goes out the window for some things, right? For sure. Okay. Then we have one with an excon now. I think we're moving into more. Oh, no, we do have another escape one later, but we'll get to that. We have Undone by the XCon by Talia Hibbert. So this was a part of her Just for Him series that she did. I read these, when was this? Was this 2 years ago I read these ones? Yes, this was 2 years ago that I read these ones. So I also really liked this one because not only is it an interracial romance, but it also has diabetes rep, which I thought was great to see. I mean, as someone who has had pre-diabetes for a while, it was cool to see, you know, something that a lot of people face to be put in a book, because, you know, diabetes doesn't sound all sexy, but so neither do a lot of chronic illnesses or things that people suffer with, you know? But this one is about Isaac Montgomery, and he's a millionaire and a murderer and a high society's latest novelty. And then we have Lizzie Keynes, and I think they end up having to work together. And then when her beloved her beloved brother is threatened, and she needs help from Isaac to take care of him. So sorry again for notes. Some of these, it's been a while. That happens sometimes when I'm putting together recs for an oddly specific one. It takes me a little bit to scoop them all up. But I really enjoyed this one. Gave this 4 stars. And it was like a 3 on the spice scale. Also, she was a little bit bossy in the bedroom, and I like a little bit of change of that. She wasn't full like Dom or anything, but just a little bit of like, this is what I want, you're gonna do it, be a good boy for me and do it, without it going full Dom sub if you don't want that. But just a little bit of her, you know, demanding what she wants. We like it. Okay, next up, I have an MM romance for you, and this one is also someone who's on parole. He's just getting out of prison for a crime he didn't commit. And this one is Risk the Fall by Riley Hart. I actually read this last year, and I like this one a fair amount. I read an arc of this one, I did. So yeah, this one was very interesting because it was ex-friend's little brother. Is kind of how I think that is the way to explain this. It's weird. But anyway, so we have Riven getting out of prison for a crime that he didn't commit. In fact, his ex-best friend is the one who committed it. And we know this right off the bat. We know what happened. He was forced to take the fall, and in exchange, his grandmother was supposed to be taken care of and left alone. And so now he's home and he needs to get a job. He has a parole officer to check in with, and he just wants to be left alone. 2 things that he's going to run into some trouble with is, number 1, his ex-best friend and his family are all worried that he's now going to like spill the beans and try to get them in trouble. And he's like, literally, I just want to be with my grandma and not have to worry about this shit. Like, leave me alone type of thing. But they don't believe him. So there's that. Then when he ends up getting his job, he's going to be doing construction. His foreman is Parrish, who's the younger brother of this guy. And he believes only the worst of him. Like, he doesn't know the secret that, you know, it's actually his brother who is the baddie. So they definitely have a lot of tension. And like, you know, Riven is like, I just need a break. I need this job. I need to be able to check in with my parole officer. I need you to sign off on my sheet every day. And I want to go home to my grandma and just, I want out of this mess. And so Parrish, you know, working with him every day and seeing him, he's starting to see the changes in him, which I thought was really cool to see. So yeah, I loved this. And then I believe that I can't remember, this is a bi awakening for someone. I don't quite remember which one of them it was, but there was a bi awakening for someone for sure. And then this was like a really beautiful relationship between the 2 of them. And of course there was the romantic suspense elements. I mean, I think most of these, when we're talking about felons and crimes, like, you're gonna know that there's that type of situation, right? So yeah, I had a good time with this one. This one was a 3 on the spice scale too. And it does have some trigger warnings for drugs, family violence, and murder. And I'm mentioning that because I'm like looking at my review right now. All of these that I mentioned, I'm sure you've been picking up on some trigger warnings. So far, all of these ones have been dark romances that I've mentioned. We also have Prisoner by Annika Martin and Skye Warren. This one is a prison break romance. This one involves our heroine, I believe I think she's a teacher who's teaching at a prison, and she ends up getting caught up in a breakup attempt and taken as like a hostage when they leave this place, and she gets dragged along with this. And unfortunately for her, there's not really a way out of this except, you know, possibly through the feelings that she's having for one of her captors. And so even though the other people in this crew would think that it's easier to just get rid of her, you know, she may have to win the guy over with a bit of her charms. Let's just say that. That's a good one. Then there is Release by Daisy Jane. This is one that I recently just read, and I did not know that this one involved a prisoner in it. But this one involves these two, that they have been together since they were really young. And not just together as in like the sexual part. Like they grew up together, basically taking care of each other. They're both from broken homes, and they kind of like lived together and helped raise each other. And so the heroine, she was really in love with this hero for a very long time, but he was very clear that like nothing can happen between us until you're old enough, because we can't risk any impropriety or anything. Well, once she's old enough and now they're finally like officially together, he ends up getting arrested for some things he's involved in, and he is involved in them. And it actually kind of explains how he's been able to better their circumstances, right? He's been involved in some things he shouldn't be. And during this time that he's in prison, he encourages her, because he's going to be there for quite a few years, he encourages her to find someone while he's gone. He's like, I don't want you to be lonely. I don't want you to be not taken care of while you're waiting for me here. He's like, I know that we're solid. Like, I know that. I want you to find someone to take care of you. Now, our heroine is like, what does he mean by this? So this book is actually a menage. It ends up being a menage, because the man that she ends up like finding to go to for comfort, he starts coming with her to the prison to meet with our hero who's in there, and they actually start to form a connection. And it feels a little bit rushed how that goes. However, like the idea behind it is that I think it's Mateo is the name of the hero in prison. I could be wrong about that. But the name of the hero, the prisoner, the hero who's in prison, he's very thankful to this man for looking out for his woman. And he is able to not have jealousy about that, because he sees that this man isn't possessive of her and in fact is willing to share her with him. It actually was more of a thing for her to deal through her jealousies about these two starting to like each other than it was the other way around. So again, I think this one was a little bit rushed. I talk about it more in a weekly wrap-up when I read this just a few weeks ago, but I thought it was an interesting take on it, and it's actually one of the books that inspired me to finally make this video, because I was like, oh wow, look. Okay, now we have some more physical books that I own. So we have another Prison Break one here. This one is The Brfa Air by Jane Henry and Sophie Lark. This is a little known Sophie Lark that most people don't know about, because it was a part of the Underworld Kings, which was a series that I had a really good time with. This was a collection of mafia romances and crime novels that are like organized crime novels that was put together by Jenna Snow is actually the one who kind of like, Jenica Snow is the one who kind of put this together. So these books all, they're not necessarily like overly connected or anything, but some of them actually are, which is cool. But anyway, this one is about our prisoner here who's, let me double check, sorry, whose name is Constantine, and Claire is a psychologist who's sent to like meet with him and analyze him. And it turns out she's actually the daughter of one of the people, I believe, who's responsible for him being in prison. And there ends up being a day where he's ready to make a jailbreak, and he takes her with as a hostage. And then he uses some of his sexy wiles on her, and this one actually has some daddy kink in it. She is kind of dumbfounded by his hot dick. We'll just go with that. This one's a little bit like, this is really like a mafia fantasy type scenario with it, but it was super hot. And I mean, you know, anything that Sophie is writing is gonna be there with it, and it was cool. This is her like one and only collab that she's ever done, because she likes being very independent with her writing. So yeah, this is super unique and definitely one to add to your collection if you're looking for a felon or prison break romance or a Sophie Lark that you haven't read. So there we go. All right, then we have another mafia, and then we'll go on to two that are like kind of historical. I'll show you what I mean. There's also Unchosen Ruler by Maggie Cole. Now, there actually is two books in this series that are about the prisoners who got out. There is this one, which is about Liam. I believe this one's Liam, right? Yeah. And then the last book in the series, too, they both go to prison for something. And at the beginning of this one, he's getting out, and he is supposed to be the next head of the Irish family. But the problem is that he's been away so long, and now like his father's very sick, like we're going to lose his father soon, and so he really needs to catch up, and he needs to gain the respect of the people, which he does have some cred for having been in the slammer for a good amount of years, but there's still so much time that's been lost, and there's also things he doesn't know, and so yeah, there's a lot of baggage that comes with that. But he actually starts to fall for this really sweet woman who is like, I think she's like a kindergarten teacher. She's really like, she's an elementary school teacher, and they start to fall for each other, and things get a little bit wild. This one is fun. This one actually has the spicy little part of it is that there is this like toy chest she has and a like sex chart that she makes. And for certain sex acts that they do together, they like earn, or he earns like points, which is something like, so she does that with her class with like chore charts, and she does it for their sexy time. And I have to say, it's still one of the most like unique and ingenious things that I've seen an author put in for sexy times ever, because yeah, it's like, if he like makes her squirt, it's worth like 500 points or something like that. Like, it was cool. It was fun. So I really love this. This was in my top like 3 or 4 books in this series, which I know there's 10. So I have a lot that I love, but I really enjoyed this one. And this one is actually the first in the O'Malley side of the series. So there is 5 that are in the Ivanoffs, and then there are 5 that are the O'Malleys. So you could just dive into this one if you want to, though a lot of her books overlap and connect, so it can be better if you start with Ruthless Stranger. But it's up to you. That's a lot of books to get to. Maybe for the upcoming Mafia romance readathon, you'll want to dive into those. Who knows? Okay, then we have a historical. We have Shana by Kathleen Woodwith. And this one actually involves Ruark and Shana. And she tricks him kind of into marrying her because he's supposed to be put to death. And her father wants her to get married. And so she decides, I'll marry a prisoner who's sentenced to die. And then when he dies, I'll be a widow and my father won't force me to marry anyone. So Shana, she is a spoiled brat in the beginning. A lot of people do not like her. A lot of people aren't going to want to read this because this is very old school. You know, this is in the first few years that historical romances were really being written at all. So there are a lot of things people won't like. But I happen to love this book, like, a lot. And when I read it with the historical Hellions, I think is who I read it with, I had such a good time. Like, I thought it was so cool, and probably is my favorite, like, really old historical romance. But anyway, well, it turns out he doesn't get put to death. He gets taken instead to be like an indentured servant on one of the like island plantations. And it turns out that the man he's working for is her father. So not only did her husband not die and make her a widow, he now sees her as owing him something because he married her. He's her husband, and now he's living in the place that she's living. And so there are some punishments that he puts her through. And I don't just mean like some physical ones. Like, there's a lot of him, you know, being frustrated with her and wanting her to grow up, but also like, you married this woman as you were about to be like killed, so there's that. But anyway, I really liked this by the end. I really love her character arc because, again, she's a brat for a good part of this book, okay? Not everyone's gonna put up with it. I get it. But Ruark is honestly pretty patient with her, and a few of the times when he does punish her, like, you really want someone to punish her because she's being such a little bitch about some stuff. But yeah, I thought I would put this one on here. And then the last one, and this is why I said this is kind of historical, because technically when this book was written, it wasn't historical, but this book is the same age as me. It's 31, so it's kind of best to read this almost as historical because a lot of the contemporary stuff in it isn't there anymore. So here we have One Summer by Karen Roberts, and this one actually involves Johnny Harris, who has just gotten out of a 10-year stretch in federal prison for murder. And we have Rachel Grant, who was his teacher back then. She's a very young teacher. And when he's getting out of prison, there's literally no one to pick him up except her. So she goes and picks him up for prison. And the thing that he was put in prison for, she never believed that he did. So he was convicted of like literally like rape and murder of someone, which, isn't it crazy that he only did like 10 years for that, if that's what it was? Oh, that's crazy. But now that he is out, this killer strikes again. And so, of course, everyone's going to put their eyes on him right away. But I really liked this. This is an older woman, age gap too, because she was, you know, his teacher, and also she helps him find a place to live and a job because she really feels horrible what happened, because she doesn't believe that he should have went to prison, but there was no one to speak up for him back then. And there also was, like, you know, DNA wasn't being used. That wasn't a thing at all yet. So there was no way to help him. So the two of them end up needing to kind of solve this murder themselves to prevent him from having to go back to jail. So I enjoyed this one a lot. And I have bought so many other Karen Roberts since I've read this, and I still haven't read another one. But yeah, this one is an ex-felon, and that one a wrongly accused man, as it were. So yeah, there we go. Those are some felon / prison wrecks, prison break, all those things. Definitely let me know some of your favorites. And please subscribe to the channel, like this video, comment down below to help out with the algorithm, and check out my links to these books if you'd like to get one. So thanks so much for watching, friends, and we'll see you next time. Bye.